So yeah, thanks for taking the time out to speak to me today, man. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and chat.
Absolutely. I always like to start off with kind of like a deep question, and
Yeah.
it's what is your first musical memory?
Ooh, that's a great question. Well, I'm gonna date myself. I was born in '85, so I think my first musical memory, one of the most powerful memories I have, actually, my first memory is like musical was like The Lion King. I don't know why that came to mind. The Lion King came out in '94, and I was 9. I was
Yeah.
8, and I remember seeing that and just like crying my eyes out when. For anyone who's not seen The Lion King, I won't spoil it, but there's something very bad that happens in the middle of that film.
Yeah.
Uh, and it was like, and I remember the music, like the Hans Zimmer score was just like haunting,
Yeah.
for the and so like that's probably like my earliest one. But growing up, like my mom's from Puerto Rico, so I just know listening to like Celia Cruz and like all these like I just grew up listening to that kind of music, like a lot of
Yeah.
salsa and stuff. So I think those two would probably be the merged. Like there's like no specific song. There's just a general vibe of like Latin music. And then
Yeah.
my mom also loved disco and stuff. She grew up in the '70s, so she just loved like Bee Gees and stuff like that. And then I think this Lion King memory that still haunts me to this day. If only his brother was not such a pos.
I know, right? I know. Well, I just want to tell you, you didn't date yourself. I'm a few years older than you.
Yeah,
So
there you go.
those things that you brought up were like right on the money for me. And also, my dad's Puerto Rican. My dad
Oh,
was Puerto
sick.
Rican too. So hearing Puerto Rican music at the house, or even hearing like the Bee Gees in the '70s, like my parents grew up in that era as well.
Yeah.
So that totally hits like right on the head for our generation, I feel like.
It does, man, and I think it's cool. Like, especially like my dad's from New York; he's from the Bronx, so like to have the kind of like obviously the Bronx was pivotal to the salsa and disco evolution in
Yeah.
this country and the nightclubs they used to have. And I think one time I went to Latin Quarter. I don't think they're open anymore, but like I'm like 12 years ago, and it was actually really good music. It's just they just bang out like all that. Like I felt like I was in the Heights, that musical that just came out with
Yeah.
which is a great musical. So it's like, yeah, I'm with you there, man. For me, that's like the stuff I grew up with. And you can hear it in my music. I just
Oh
put out a
yeah.
track on Circus Recording, which is Yusef's label, called Bailar Prohibido, which I did a little bit of the vocal for, I found some other like just kind of like a conga riffs that I put into the track, and so that's like that's a heavy influence in some of my stuff.
Oh no, you can absolutely hear that. I was actually going to ask you about that, and since you brought it up, I'll just ask you now:
Sure.
is that something that you normally do? Say, do vocals on your own tracks, or was that like a new thing for you on that?
It's definitely become more of it's a newer thing. To be honest, it became a thing with over the years. It's just been harder and harder to use samples in music.
Yeah,
Obviously,
for sure.
ever since certain tracks, like there are certain pivotal tracks that came out that it was like, oh, okay, kind of feels like we can't do too much of that anymore.
Yeah,
And it sucks because house music is obviously grew up like people sample everything constantly.
yeah,
I mean, right now I'm listening to like that Drake "Way Too Sexy" track, which is like one of the like that sample from "I'm Too Sexy" is like one of the
yeah,
most noticeable tracks, and they did it in a good way. I think it's fun what they did, but sometimes I use that to point out to my friends like this is look, everyone samples. It's not just house music artists. But that being said, I started just playing with it because I was like, look, a lot of the vocals I was doing were spoken word anyway. So I would,
right.
I have a mic here and a mic stand. I'm gonna lean it over. Little pop
Nice. Oh,
filter
you
and
got a little
everything
filter on the too.
that I use, and I just started doing really simple stuff, and it worked really well. I think the in some of the first tracks I did, and then it just kind of evolved, and now I have like auto tune and melodyne, which anyone who's ever done their vocals before and is not a singer like me would be familiar with.
Yeah, for sure.
And those allow you to kind of repitch what you're doing. And yeah, so it kind of has become this bigger thing that makes my life easier when it comes to actually releasing songs. But
Those
it's
sample
like
tunes.
I'm not a singer by any means or anything like that. I just think that like I actually get inspired to do vocals by guys like Future and Travis Scott, who aren't really singers either, but they're kind of just like humming and sing-songing these kind of catchy like melodies.
Yeah,
And it's like not even what they're saying that matters. It's just kind of the emotion in the vocal that they're saying, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so I've got like some of my tracks where people are like, what does the vocal mean? I'm like, it doesn't mean anything. It's just I played a melody on a piano and then I just kind of added like words to it and vocalized over the melody, and then that's how that vocal became that. And they're like, people will hit me up all the time and be like, dude, I think I get what you're trying to say here. And I'm like, you don't, because it's
No, because
nonsense.
it's
It's
nothing.
just gibberish. It's nothing. It's like, it's literally nothing. It makes no sense.
I love that, but I mean, it kind of speaks to the fact that like melody is something that
Hold on, I lost you on the audio. Give me 1 second.
no
Can you hear
worries.
me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Uh, what happened here? I lost my audio. Give me 1 second.
No worries.
Oh, now there it is. It's back. Sorry.
All good.
I got you.
So I just want to say that, that kind of speaks to the idea that like melody is even more impactful than words are sometimes.
Yeah,
Because that crosses like all of the boundaries. And I think that maybe one of the reasons why dance music is so powerful, because so much can be said without ever saying a word in a song.
absolutely. I
Um,
was in a car with somebody with a Dutch after ADE one year, and he was like, he was a rapper, a Dutch rapper, and he was like, man, I'm a really good Dutch rapper, but he's like, I have no audience because no one speaks Dutch, which is what like so. But and I was like, oh yeah, like we're talking about dance music and hip hop, and it's like
yeah,
hip hop's really popular in America because people can follow the lyrics, but a
right,
lot of non-Americans listen to hip hop and they're like, it's just a 4 minute drum loop, they don't understand anything. But with
right.
dance music, you can have people from all over the world in Europe, and it's just everyone knows like little simple vocals that are in dance music. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, and it just makes it more universal, I think, for people from different backgrounds.
No, absolutely. I think it definitely touches more people that way.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to go back to you've told me about like what your parents listened to. When did you start to form your own musical taste independent of your parents and what you were hearing at home?
So I like grew up before I moved to New York about 15 years ago. Even though my dad's from here, I lived in outside of New Orleans, in Baton Rouge, in Louisiana, for a number of years. Well, pretty much all my childhood until I was 17.
Oh wow.
And growing up down there, like you listen obviously to a lot of jazz music, you
Mm,
listen to a lot of different styles of music, and so I definitely was influenced by that. I listened to a lot of hip hop as a kid, so like Master P and Lil Wayne are huge. Like that was like a huge thing when I was in middle school and high
right.
school. Um, Lil Wayne is still one of my favorite artists, and so I grew up listening to that kind of stuff, and then when I was in college, I started listening to a lot more kind of Latin music, and then I found reggaeton, through my Puerto Rican friends, which was like a
Yeah.
mixture of hip hop and the Latin stuff. So
Yeah.
I listened to a lot of that, and then it just kind of like I kind of started. My brother gave me a CD in high school with like all these old like classics, like Alice DJ, Better Off Alone, like dance music classics, like
Yeah.
songs like that, and Bomb Funk MC's Freestyler and stuff like that from like the 90s.
Yeah.
And I listened to that like on repeat in 2001. And I had never heard music like that, really, because and then I started kind of like going in, and I downloaded Fruity Loops back when there was Fruity Loops in like
Oh wow.
2004, and just played with little beats, and like I was like, oh my god, I found this like arpeggiator that I could make melodies from, and then that kind of started to shape my music. So like yeah, like hip hop is obviously I do a lot of edits. I'm
Right.
literally doing an edit right now of Way Too Sexy just to play. I have a show in Vegas this weekend, so I'm doing a little
Oh,
edit of
perfect.
that. But that kind of informed my musical taste, and it led me down a path where when I was in New York and Chicago, where I went to school, which is the birthplace of house music, you get some good DJs out there, Frankie Knuckles obviously, and it kind of was just a hodgepodge, man. It was a really like I would love to be like, oh, I grew up listening to Richie Houghton, but I don't know that many people who do. I found my way through like all kinds of other different styles of music, and here I am now.
I think that's pretty common though. I feel like it's
Yeah.
like there's almost nobody out there. I mean, maybe our generation of kids are going to be the ones that say they grew up with their parents playing like house music and all of this stuff like in the house all the time and that's how they fell into it. But um you know, people of a certain age, that wasn't cool
Exactly.
before we latched onto it. It was
Exactly.
really underground music, so it's not uncommon to hear that you just kind of found your way into it because somebody handed you a random CD at some point.
Yeah, I would love to tell you I didn't have Green Day Dookie on repeat in middle school, but I was a kid in the '90s, and that's just what we had. You know what I
So did
mean?
I. I
Yeah,
mean,
I think
who
everyone.
who didn't at that
Who
point?
didn't
You know what I'm
exactly?
saying?
Who didn't listen to the Spice Girls? People deny it, but they sell 20 million records. It's like somebody's
I
buying
mean,
those.
there were at least 20 million people who listened to it, if not
Exactly.
more. You know what I'm saying?
No one would admit it. I did. I was like, if you want to be my love, but nobody
Oh
would
no, I
admit
was into that stuff too. Like,
it.
as a teenager, I feel like as you're trying to find yourself, like pop music is like the entry point to everything else because it's like a amalgamation of all the other things that are cool.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Um, was there now you said you picked up Fruity Loops when you were like in college, but before that, were you inclined musically at all, or did you like have music? Did you like sing? I know you didn't sing, but did you like play instruments or anything like that?
I picked up the guitar in middle school for a little bit. I always knew I had like I should have been playing music because my mom's dad was a saxophonist, like
Yeah,
or something like that, and she was always really into music, and she was a great singer, and she would like sing and hum melodies perfectly. And so I think there was music, and so I kind of knew that I should be doing it,
yeah,
but I didn't stick with it in middle school because I got tired of it or something like that, and I wish I had picked up a piano instead of a guitar because I think I like the piano a lot more. But then I didn't actually start learning how to play piano until much later in life, like 10, 11 years ago. And before that, so I did start off kind of like I was a producer before I was a DJ, but
yeah.
I just got Fruity Loops because I was like, I wonder how they make these songs. And when I saw like the old Fruity Loops kind of grid, like the drum machine grid, where you would just put the
Yeah,
clap,
click, click, click.
kick, and the hats, I was like, oh my God, I have a beat. And then like, so it became a really easy way for people who had maybe some musical talent, but not a musical training to get into music. But I wish I had. I wasn't musically inclined until then. But now that I've been playing, on the piano behind me for about 10 years, I can find my way around. I can jam a little bit, but I'm not. I still wouldn't call myself like a pianist or a performer, but I
Right.
can work my way around a piano.
Nice. Was there like a particular moment when you like realized that you were no longer a fan and that you wanted to make this like your part of your identity?
Yeah, man. In college, I used to drive around and listen to records, and my friend I would listen to the instrumentals in high school and college of rap music, which is like
Oh
not
wow.
the
That
beats are simple and they don't change, but I just really love that aspect of the music. I always listen to the beat first, and if I like the beat, sometimes the vocals don't even matter. So
right,
I would kind of, and then when I was in college is when we had kind of it shifted in hip hop. Like you had the Scott Storches and you had the
right,
Timbalands and it was the Neptunes, and it was like the first time that producers were stars in and of themselves, and it was
right,
like just as important of, and I think that paved the way for a lot of what you see now where it's like Calvin Harris featuring Rihanna or whatever. Like that wasn't really existing before that time. It was like your producer was some unknown guy and it was just all about the rapper or the singer. So for me, like when Scott Storch became like like not a celeb, but a personality in his own way, or DJ Khaled, I would be like, oh, like I wanted to be more that like them. I wanted to be the producer making all the beats and not so much the artist or the rapper singing. And I actually got my start in Chicago. I made some hip hop beats and I sold my first one for $200, and I was like
oh
freaking out
wow.
at the time. I was like, this is so much money to me, to 20-year-old me. And then some guy rapped over it, and it was a cool song, and like, I mean, it was a start to make me realize like I was that kind of got me hooked, and then from there I just kind of kept playing with it and found my way.
Well, I want to talk about that for a second because like I think a lot of people get into this with the idea that they could make money, but they have no bearing on how that's actually going to happen. But like, it's interesting that you say you were able to sell a hip hop beat like back then for some amount of money because I feel like that kind of like gives you the idea. You're like, oh, I could actually make this a career. It's not just going to be a hobby.
Absolutely. And back then, I mean, we're talking 2004. It was you still had record sales. You still had
Right,
people that would be like, I'll go buy a beat, and then I'll put like, even this unknown rapper in Chicago pressed his mixtape, sold it to a couple friends, and made some money back. You know what
right,
I mean? Like back in the day, you didn't have to sell too much, but like obviously over the last 15 years with the change in format of how people consume music and streaming, there's likely less money, to be made. I don't know, in selling beats and stuff. Probably not though. I mean, people still pay good money for music, but yeah, for me it was like I was just like, wow, this is cool. Like I can make some money doing this, and then I started, I just really love the idea of being the guy who made the music. And then I realized quickly that like that it made sense to DJ, because when I started making house music and dance music, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is like, I didn't make the connect at the time. It would still wasn't like now where it's like you have to DJ to make money, because
Right.
there's not as much money in streaming. But like in 2000 in the 2000s, it was still kind of like it made sense to do that, because like now I can play my music for people. You know what I mean? And
Right.
it's easy to make a track and then play it at a gig. And rather than hoping for somebody else to play it, like I was like, well, I could just learn how to DJ and then I can play my music myself. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I want to talk about your first Beatport number one, um, because I read a story that it came together surprisingly fast, which I always find interesting. I'm a producer myself, so for me, when those things happen in the studio, I feel like sometimes that's the best work, because you do if you sit down and do it all in one session, it's just like you're in the flow. You
Yeah,
really just like you leave it all leave it all on the table, as it were. Do you find that your best tunes come together when you're in the flow? And can you tell us a little bit
absolutely.
about that process for Vale?
Absolutely. That was a remix I did for Moan Recordings, a really nice
Right,
Italian label, and it was. I think the fact that it was a remix meant obviously I had a vocal stem that I had to work with, so that kind
right,
of gave me some frame around it. But what I try to do is only listen to a little bit of the track to get an idea of the way to remix it. Because if I listen to too much of the original, then my brain will be like, this vocal goes with that kind of beat, and so I just kind of like pick around. And yeah, I did that in a few hours in one session, one sitting. And it was just, it came together really fast, really quickly. And the best tracks I've done, the ones that have gotten the most support, have all like just kind of fallen out of me. And not every track does,
right,
but when you have this, when you're just kind of putting the pieces together and it works and it fits like really quickly, for me, the more I think about something, the more I might fiddle with it and change something that's already sounding good. Or then you're like, when you listen to, I'm a firm believer you can only listen to a loop so many times before your brain gets tired of it. And even though it
yeah,
was a good loop, you start to get tired of it. And I produce in a loop. Like I produce kind of like I start with like the breakdown in the main chorus, and then I kind of will add the intro and the outro at the end of it. And if I can get a big breakdown, a good breakdown rather, not necessarily a big breakdown that I like, and a good beat, then that lets me know that I have kind of the two bookends to the track that I want to put out.
right,
And those usually come together pretty quickly. And the vocal, whether I do it myself, or whether it's a remix where I take or like I use a sample, those are always like, sometimes I will make tracks and then you're like kind of like looking for Cinderella's foot with the shoe when you're putting all these vocals on top of it that don't necessarily fit. You're looking for the right fit on top. But with that remix, I already had the vocal. I do sometimes add vocals to remixes, but I try to kind of pay homage to the original track and keep it like the original. And so then it was just like, okay, now I just have to lay out down a beat, and that's like the easiest part for me, is laying down the beat around it. Um, and so for me, it just came together really quickly. And Moan is a great label. They've had so many, like, so much success in the minimal deep tech charts lately, and that track just like really started to gain momentum, and people started playing it. And the first big support I had on that was Eats Everything back to back Andrea Oliva at
wow,
Ushuaia Ant's closing party in 2019. And I didn't even find out about that until like after, like a little while after it happened, on like 101 track list. It just popped up, and then I like just started like, yeah, it was a great feeling, because that like back then, I went on tour right after to Europe, and then I got to play it and hear other people playing it, and that was a really good feeling as well. So that was a lot of fun.
how cool after like this long journey to like see that you're not just that your stuff is working on the dance floor, but to see people that you probably looked up to for a really long time, like supporting your work, like
Absolutely.
in such epic venues too.
Yeah, man.
I want to talk about Harry Romero and Joeski. How'd you hook up with them initially?
So Harry, I used to do some events on Thursdays in the Panther Room, and Harry was one of the first artists I booked, just to have, I'd always respected his music. He's a legend around these parts, and
Yeah,
I don't know if I had met him before that, but we did a party together in 2016, like April of 2016, and it was just a really good night. And he just played such great music. I mean, he's just for one of my favorite producers. He's always been and always will be. and then he essentially got, you know, he hit me up when him and Joeski were thinking about doing some new party series and or some new like events in the area, and we all got on a call together, and it just worked out really well. And then Joe and I became friends, Joeski, and I ended up helping him. I ran his label, Maya Recordings, for a little bit. I
Right.
A&R'd it and helped him run that, and it was, you know, we put out some really good music there. And that I've just remained really close friends with Harry and Joe. Like they've always been people that give me good feedback on my records, and Joe is, you know, they've given me invaluable insight into how they produce, and they've been like, they are just two great people and great individuals, and I think their music speaks for itself over the years with how they've managed to just stay at the forefront by always dropping great releases. And so yeah, we remain friends to this day. And you know, I need to call them both. It's been a minute, so thanks for reminding me. But yeah, they're just great artists and great people, and like, you know, we've gotten along really well. And then we ended up doing some of those events. We called it Yahey, and we played some parties on the Output roof, which were amazing. Where it would just be, the format was just the three of us would go back to back the whole
Oh
time for
wow.
5 hours, and it kept me on my toes because those are like veterans in the game, been DJing for years. So it would be really a definite, like, I would challenge myself to play certain ways, but I also think we balance each other out a little bit because I at that time I was playing a little bit more kind of like music on style, Ibiza daytime groovers, and
Yeah.
so like they might play like a classic house track with big piano and sax riff, and then I would play this kind of like Balearic groove thing. And I thought it was really good and fun, and I think it was a nice way to kind of, because the crowd that came out was obviously like a lot of younger people, so it gave them kind of a nice introduction to like some classic sounds and some more
Yeah.
modern stuff. So it was fun.
Well, that's like an education in house music right there.
Yeah. And I
From
was
three
being
different
educated at the
directions.
time myself, sitting next to
Yeah,
them in the DJ booth, and I can say that.
absolutely. Like what an inspiration to to see two of the greatest in the game work.
Amazing. Yeah, they're great. They're amazing.
Awesome. Well, I love to hear that. Well, I have two more things for you. The first is my last question, but the second thing is what we like to call the speed round.
Yeah.
The speed round is where I ask you a bunch of like real quick questions
All right.
all in a row. You answer as fast as possible.
I'm ready.
They're mostly not serious.
Okay. I'm ready,
So,
man.
so they'll be easy. But before I get to that, I always like to end interviews by asking what excites you about the future of dance music.
That's a great question. I've been thinking about that a lot. I watched an IMS panel where there were some great people talking about the future of dance music, Seth Troxler included, the Bookers of Fabric. I think it's interesting right now. I mean, club culture is definitely at a point where it needs a lot of resources given the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
There's really exciting things happening though. That like Brooklyn Mirage is doing really well, and they're booking great artists. Gray Area, of course, is doing amazing things with the way that they're bringing that culture. And I think MJ and Joey and the team have done a wonderful job of making it not just about a party, but like this is like dance music culture. It's about the culture.
Yeah.
These interviews and the spotlights they do on artists. It makes it more like of a thing, and so I think that, if the world opens up fully next year, meaning like Ibiza is a full go, and like ADE and Sonar and BPM and all that stuff happens, then
Yeah.
I think that the future is bright because it gives us a chance to all get back together. The thing that's bothered me the most is not being able to see people. Like ADE's next week or 2 weeks from now, and I go to that. I've been going every year for 5 years,
Right.
and it's really hard not to go because it's just so amazing to see everybody and get the like energy of Amsterdam, which is one of my favorite cities, and
Right.
hear, like, you sit down with people and you actually make plans. Like there's only so much you can do. Like, hey, when you're backstage at a club, you've both played, your ears are shot, and it's like, yeah, let's talk, and then they're on tour and you got to go somewhere else. But like at ADE, it's like more acceptable to just cut straight to business and be like, let's have a meeting, let's sit down. I'm going to ask you what I need, you ask you what you need, and it's not transactional. It's just business, and it's
Right.
good, and so like having those types of platforms I think are helpful. But overall, I think that like there's never been more people paying attention to dance music. The venues
Never. Yeah.
are the places that you're hearing people play are crazier. There's people doing house music parties in Jacksonville, Florida, in Des Moines, Iowa, and
Right.
then like there used to be like 7 cities, and even as recent as 10 years ago, where you could have a good underground party, and now it's just blossoming. And if once that kind of more younger crowd in America catches on, then it's going to just keep keep blowing up, and around the world as well.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I love to see it, especially coming from somebody. I started my journey in like the late 90s. It was my first party in 99.
Oh
And I
wow.
used to I was so jealous of Europe and the UK
I
because they
know, same.
had because the culture there was so deeply ingrained and like
Amazing. It's
it
amazing.
wasn't cool here at that
Yeah.
point at
Yeah.
all. Like
Yeah.
we were still in warehouses. And don't get me wrong, I love a warehouse, but I was real jealous of like seeing festivals of that size and knowing there's like 10 cities you could go to throughout Europe or 15 or 20 that all had great scenes. So to see this happen in America is just like really amazing.
It's amazing because you're right, absolutely. Like going when you go to your first ADE or when you go to Ibiza, you just see how deeply ingrained the culture is. Like listening to Jamie Jones play Paradise on a Wednesday, he can play anything he wants, and they just love it. And I like that was like the most fun I've had in the past in a while as a crowd member. Just I
Right.
was hanging out backstage, meeting people, and at like 5 a.m. like we the cuts off at 6:30. Joseph Capriati was in the main room and Jamie was on the terrace, and I just went back out there and was listening to Jamie on the floor, and I was like, this is just incredible. Like I felt like I didn't get to go to clubs in the 90s because I was only 15 in
Right.
2000, but like I felt like that was what I feel like it felt a little bit more like. No one was really on their phone either by 6 a.m. Everyone was too tired. Their phones were dead. So it was just people just in the vibe, and it was awesome. It was a great experience.
Beautiful. I love that. All right, so we're gonna do our speed round now. I got about like 15, 20 questions for you, and we're gonna just go through them as quickly as possible. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it, man.
All right. Coffee or tea?
T.
Biggie or Tupac?
Oh, Tupac.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Pizza or sandwiches?
Pizza.
Best New York pizza?
Uh, good question. Raza actually in Jersey City is my favorite.
All right, nice. Pineapple on pizza?
No, hell no.
Intimate club or festival?
Intimate club.
Rave or club?
Oof. Rave.
Snow or beach?
Beach.
Lake or ocean?
Ocean.
If you could have one superpower, would you choose flight or invisibility?
Flight, because of my lifestyle, would make things so much easier.
Yes, right? No more paying for them. Analog or digital?
Digital.
PlayStation, Xbox, or Nintendo?
Nintendo.
Old school. I love it.
I had that one ready to go as soon as you said Xbox.
Would you rather swim in a pool full of Nutella or a pool full of maple syrup?
Maple syrup.
Drum and bass or trap?
Trap.
Pop or hip hop?
Hip hop.
Favorite color?
Black or gray. Ugh, so boring, but I can't help
so
it.
techno.
I know, it's just as a kid, it was like, look at my shirt. It's like monochrome. Sorry.
Right. Carl Cox or Chris Lake?
Carl Cox.
Flip flops or shoes?
Shoes.
Finish this sentence. Before I die, I want to
spread my music to as many people as possible and have a happy life.
I love it. American version of The Office or the British?
Ooh, British. Ricky Gervais, the GOAT.
All right. And guilty pleasure TV show?
Anime. I watch a lot of anime, super like Japanese. I'm watching Squid Game right now, which is not quite the same thing, but like it's amazing. But I watch tons of anime, super nerdy stuff.
I love it. See, I love doing these because you learn these like weird little snippets of people that you wouldn't normally get. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to us today. We really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you, man. I'm excited too, and I appreciate everything. I got some exciting stuff coming up, so I just want to quickly shout out my Instagram at Alan.Nieves. I've got some really cool stuff I'm announcing, so don't forget to follow me on there on social media and Twitter. I appreciate it. You've got some really cool stuff that's coming in the pipeline. So thanks for having me and giving me a chance to talk about it.
Absolutely. It's been our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Mine as well. Take care, man.
Talk to you soon.
See ya.
Bye. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna follow. Send me a message on Instagram, and I'll follow you back, man. It was nice chatting with you. We should definitely keep in touch and stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely want to talk to you more. Yeah, yeah, this is good. Thank you so much. I'll hit you up right now.
All right. Take care, Alex. See you
too. Peace.